So thank you, Elena.
Yeah.
Okay. So good morning, good evening, everyone from around the world. This is Henry Chung, the chairman for the Finnish Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. And welcome to this webinar on the opportunities and challenges of industrial metaverse. So welcome. So first, housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded. So there'll be recordings will be sent to all the participants, those who registered, probably by next Monday. And I suggest that you keep your microphone and your video off just to save bandwidth. There are quite a number of us joining, so please keep them off to avoid feedbacks. And if you have questions, please type in the chat. That will be moderated at the end of the session. There's a specific time for the Q&A. Okay, let's get things started. First, I would like to introduce the two speakers for today. We are most honored to have the two speakers from Silicon Valley. Well, welcome. First is Leslie Shannon from Nokia.
Hello.
Hello, Leslie. Thank you for joining. He is the head of trend and innovation scouting for Nokia, and she's based in Silicon Valley. So she worked in Nokia for the 5G, the innovation, robotic drones, visual analytics, clouds, gaming, and augmented and virtual reality world. So welcome, Leslie, and thank you for your kindness in presenting today.
Thank you so much, Henry.
Thank you, Leslie. And the second speaker is Juha Listila, and he's the Vice President Americas for Immerso, which is part of Hexagon. And Juha is a business development person with more than 15 years experience in sales, marketing, product management, and engineering. He's also based in Silicon Valley. So he is focused on visual positioning, spatial mapping, AR, VR, XR solutions in the real world. So he's from Finland and currently California based. So, and you want to say a few words?
No, I'm absolutely honored to join the panel. Thanks to everyone who's joining us today, and I hope we have a great panel today.
Thank you, Juha.
Thank you.
Yeah, and also we would like to thank our partner, Immerso, for their kind support for this webinar. And also there are a lot of partners for the Chamber of Commerce around Hong Kong and in Asia. So thank you very much for supporting. Okay, we'll go, I'll give a little bit of background about the industrial metaverse. So industrial metaverse is sort of in the industry 4.0, smart factory. So we are referring to the integration of advanced technology. And there are, the usual suspects of Internet of Things, AI, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on. So the idea is to make things more efficient, more flexible, and more personalized, and better maintenance and management for industry. This is the in a nutshell about the industrial metaverse. So what are the challenges? Of course, the usual suspect: security, privacy, workforce skills training, integration with the current system. Of course, cost. If you are, the owner of the factory, the cost and return on investment. For challenges on the side, we have opportunities as well. So with the industrial metaverse, we are looking at increased efficiency, improved QC, quality control, and more personalized production. And we are looking at currently, smaller batches of manufacturing. So these are very important, in particular for the smaller scale type of plants. And of course, enhanced safety, which is one of the important aspects as well. So taking that aside, for the company I work for, Connect, so we have this already applied in many aspects. We have the we call 24/7 connected services, which is a cloud-based services using AI and analytics, big data analytics, to have a predictive maintenance system. So we have a better management of the equipment in service. And also we have this new services on, we call DX class elevators, escalators. So these are the advancement in the design. And also we have this virtual car designer where you can see the actual design before they are even before they are put even onto the drawing. So before manufacturing and so on. So the end user will be able to see exactly what the look and feel is like, and how the management and maintenance of the system is like. On top of that, we have this next slide, and the next one as well. So we have this VR training where we train our staff on without going onto site. So everything is done with their goggles, so that the training is done off-site, and that would, in our test run in the last 2 years, improve the overall training, the outcome. The technicians are better equipped and they are better trained before they are even sent on site. So there are a lot of elevator and escalator accidents in the past 3 or 4 years. We see this is an important aspect where we are able to supply with a better safety and better quality system to our customers. So in a nutshell, this is how we manage the so-called industrial metaverse. But this is only a very high-level aspect. Maybe I'll let Leslie, who is one of the experts in the field of industrial metaverse, to say to deliver the real challenges and real development in this particular aspect. Over to you, Leslie.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Henry. Let me share my slides. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Now, I'm a little bit unique within Nokia because Nokia, we are actually deeply involved in the industrial, the enterprise, and coming a little bit later, the consumer metaverse. But my particular role, I'm actually head of our trend and innovation scouting. So my role is to look outside the company at the wider industry. So I'm not going to give you a Nokia product list today. I'm going to actually show you the wider things that I'm seeing as a trend scout. And so, so when thinking and looking specifically at the industrial metaverse, the important thing to keep in mind is that the metaverse in general, as a topic, it's the fusion, the combination of the physical and the digital. And okay, all right, what does that mean? Well, in a certain extent, we don't even know what this means, right? And so I really emphasize the examples that I'm just about to show you. These are the examples that are here today. But the incredibly awesome power of, you know, all of computing and being able to generate information or draw on information and to make the invisible visible. This is going to be a huge change in multiple ways that we do business and that we approach many different problems that we have in the industrial world today. So, but let me start with some examples. My big talk here will be much more concrete if I actually start off with some examples. Now, within the world of the metaverse, quite frankly, a lot of metaverse happens on PC. But today I'm going to focus on the things that are happening in headsets. And we've got a spectrum here with augmented reality, which is where you are still seeing the physical world around you, but there you've got a headset on and there is some kind of digital element that's been added to it. And then you've got or rather, you can see information, but it's not necessarily integrated with the world around you. And so, for example, the Magic Leap, that headset, you can see really excellent digital twins, but they're just hovering there in midair, and they may or may not be sitting on a tabletop. Whereas something like both AR and VR, there you're seeing digital information, but it's integrated with the physical world around you. And we've got different use cases there, and then a full-on virtual reality world. For example, the kind you can access with a headset like the Vario XR3, an excellent finished product. So go Vario. In this case, you are dealing with a fully digitized environment and fully immersive. So you are no longer seeing the physical world at all. Now, these are only examples. I'm going to give you examples of each one of these categories. So let me get into it. But again, I highlight this is just the beginning. And really the way to kind of take the examples that I'm just about to give you is to think about the principles that each of these examples indicates, and think about how doing a similar kind of thing would be relevant for your own industry, because everybody's use cases are slightly different. And so, for example, starting off, this is a really, straightforward, this is one of the most classic uses of augmented reality. Wearing glasses, and note here, why glasses? Why would I put this on my head when we've got actually a lot of really good augmented reality through smartphones, for example? Well, the thing is, if you're in an industrial setting, you want to have your hands free. So having some kind of glasses that, in this case, let an expert who is sitting somewhere else see what you see and then give you advice and stuff, and training. So we have a junior person in the field and a more expert person sitting back in a central area, possibly being able to support multiple junior people out in the field. That's a much better way to leverage the expert person's knowledge than to have the expert person going out and only being able to serve one customer a day. Whereas in this case, you might have the expert being able to serve 30 customers in a day, and you've got the junior people out there actually learning so they can become experts as well. And now I should mention here, as the slide makes reference, this is an example from Porsche. They actually created their Tech Live Look glasses with a company called Ether back in 2018. And what they found was that initially they got a 40% improvement in repair speed when people wore the glasses, but realistically, the mechanics on the ground were not interested in wearing the glasses. And there were two main reasons for it. One was this was new technology and it was kind of weird, and people were a little bit uncomfortable with kind of putting a computer on their face because this was such a new thing. They were also a little bit embarrassed about using these glasses when other people could see them, because there's a little bit of an admission that you don't know what you're doing when you put on these glasses and you ask an expert to help you. And what happened was that when COVID happened, suddenly there's nobody else to ask and there's nobody else to see you. And so Porsche found that usage of the glasses went up by 300% when COVID hit, and suddenly people were alone and they really needed the expert help. And so COVID, and that's indicative of how augmented reality has just exploded in many ways in industrial and manufacturing situations, because of people not being able to access enterprise or access experts who were right next to them anymore. But that's a really simple use case. Here's one that you may not have seen before. And I mentioned before, making the invisible visible. This is the real power of digitization and being able to help us visualize the things that we can't see with our actual eyeballs. This is from a company called Bad VR. They have a product called C Signal that integrates, it understands the strength of a radio signal in a particular area. And this is an implementation done by Telia Norway. in Norway. And so they're using this tool. So this laptop is only here to like show us what this person is seeing with the glasses on their head. They're looking around and they're actually being able to see the strength of the Wi-Fi signal in this person's home. And so Telia Norway is using this when they have people going in and installing Wi-Fi routers in people's homes. They're able to use this to actually show where is the best place to put the router so that we get the best possible signal throughout the home. And these bars that we can see that green bar in the middle, that means it's good coverage. And then we've got kind of yellow bars off to the side, and then that back left, it's a red bar. Oh, okay, so in that corner, the coverage is not so good. So maybe we need to rethink where the router goes so that we can actually make sure that everywhere in this apartment actually has good Wi-Fi coverage. So, so this kind of whole, like, oh my God, being able to see the strength of the radio around you. Oh yeah, this is the kind of thing that's actually coming in the industrial metaverse. Now, moving from those pure augmented reality examples, let's start looking at some of the more mixed reality examples. And here's an example from Verizon, again, here in the United States, where they're using, actually, in this case, I think they're using smartphones to be able to move through an industrial floor, and here's all the machines, and then have the actual current specs and current performance of each machine displayed in a readable format as you're moving around the shop floor or as you're moving around the manufacturing floor. Also, we've got here, and so that's what we're seeing on the right, which is the physical machines with the digital readouts. And then on the left, we've actually got a full-on point cloud, which is a full digital twin in augmented reality that you can also look at to be able to not just see what's happening in real time, but to be able to run what if scenarios. And that's a really important thing for the metaverse. And I'll come back to what if scenarios in a little bit. But another really key element of mixed reality is more on the presence is actually a really important part of it. And not just you being aware of what you can't see with machines, but also being able to erase distance and to bring us together. I mean, we're all here in a Zoom call right now, but frankly, all I can see is my slides. I can't see any of you, and so that's that's less than ideal. So if you guys are like super bored right now, I can't tell. so there's some drawbacks to being in Zoom compared to being person to person. And so we're seeing the creation and the rise of a lot of full-on immersive metaverse environments. But in this case, and these two examples, South Korea's Zingbang, which is what this is a picture of, and then the UK, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte and Accenture, they all have their own versions of this. These are PC-based. And so what you have is you have these workspaces that you go into through the PC with your avatar, but they also integrate, if you want, the actual video camera, the live video camera of the person. You can see that's over the heads of all the little avatars here. And it's amazing. If you haven't had an experience like this in terms of presence with your actual corporate team, your remote team, anybody who's far away, give it a try, because it's amazing how much more you feel like you are actually with that person, as opposed to the being able to see, people in a grid on a Zoom call where you really don't get that strong sense of a presence at all. And if we were giving a presentation right now in this kind of an environment, I can tell you it would be much more dynamic, and I would be able to look out in the audience and see all of you, and you would be able to see me, and crucially each other, making it a much more, the feeling of, yes, we all are here together, and creating that sense of community that that a Zoom call actually lacks. But getting back to the more industrial rather than the more enterprise corporate, the collaborative AR is so strong. This is again one of the really strong use cases that has come out and is just thriving. And BMW, hats off to BMW. They have been really powering ahead in all of the industrial metaverse. And so it's always worth seeing what they're up to. And so on this example, they've been working with a company called HoloLight to do prototyping, collaborative prototyping. And so the idea here is we do have two people who are physically located in the same space, but what they're doing is they both have the headsets on so that their colleagues who are also in other places can join them and they can see each other in the view of the headset. And they can actually start to develop prototypes that will fit into, as they're building a new machine and making sure that, whatever device, whatever element they're crafting, it will fit into the machine as they're engineering it. And the thing is with having digital prototypes, for those of you who have worked in prototypes, you know that when you're doing a physical prototype, they're super fragile. They don't travel well. If you are doing 100% digital prototype in this kind of a situation, you can share it with anybody globally. It's not going to break. You don't have to like put it in a box and mail it and hope it comes out okay on the other side. And anyone from anywhere in the world can tweak it and adjust it in any way at all. And you can actually then instantly transport it to a customer site and show them as well. So rapid collaborative prototyping is a huge area that we're seeing a lot of traction for in mixed reality. But I mentioned digital twins, and let's start getting into the fully immersive side of the industrial metaverse here. What if scenarios are actually one of the biggest potential money savers in the industrial world? And so let me explain what we're looking at here. In Melbourne, in Australia, there's a tunnel, the Burnley Tunnel. And when the city planners originally created the Burnley Tunnel, which goes between the Central Business District and the airport, they planned for traffic to go through it at a particular speed. But once it was built, they found that traffic was going through it more slowly than they had planned, which is good for safety, but in terms of city management, it was actually a huge problem because it was causing traffic backups throughout the rest of the city because they had expected the traffic to move through the Burnley Tunnel at a much higher speed. And so they were like, oh, all right, well, how do we solve this? And so they eventually turned to a company called Snowball in Australia. And what Snowball did was they did a digital twin of, I think it was like 10 kilometers of the tunnel. And then they were able to do A/B testing while altering lots of different elements of the driving experience through the tunnel. So changing the lighting, changing the road signs, changing the road markers, changing the paint color on the walls. And by tweaking all of these different elements and then putting people into immersive virtual reality goggles and having them drive through the tunnel, with a little, toy steering wheel, they were able to see how quickly people drove through the tunnel. And without making any changes in the physical world at all, they were able to determine what was going to be exactly the right mix to get people to drive faster, but not too fast through the tunnel. And so, so the original planners of the toll tunnel, they had been planning to like just change the paint, see what happened, like in the physical world. This, by doing it in virtual reality, this saved them millions. And so again and again and again, we see this kind of a use case where, especially any kind of a big build, do it in virtual reality first and you will save millions. But virtual reality for digital twins, and this is staying in the city planning scenarios, but I hope you can kind of take the message and apply it to more to factories, if that's appropriate for you. So the city of Wellington, sorry, Melbourne, Wellington, Wellington. Okay, no, Wellington in New Zealand, the capital. They have actually been doing a digital twin of their city. They've been building this for over 10 years. And so, so when they're looking at putting a tram into the city, as we can see in the picture on the right, again, great way to do the what if scenario to get feedback both from government agencies and from just people. Hey, is this tram going to work? Is this going to leave enough room on the streets for cars and pedestrians and bicycles? But the real second magic power of a full digital twin of a large scale entity like a city or a really busy enterprise floor with a lot of different data and a lot of different machines is being able to bring together the data from everything all together to be able to find insights that may not have occurred to you otherwise, that are kind of beyond what the human brain can comprehend. And so And so, so Wellington spent a good 10 years normalizing their data from all their databases, from all the city departments, and they ran it into their digital twin, so which is satellite based and photo real, which is what we're seeing here on the left. And they were able to ask and answer questions that they never were able to get at before. And so the red dots here that you're seeing, this is actually a vomit map of Wellington, because before they had no strong picture of where people had thrown up on the streets, because that information was being gathered by the police department, the street cleaning, and social services. And that information was scattered across 3 different databases. But by normalizing the data, they were able to put it into one database. Okay, that's good. But if it's rows in an Excel spreadsheet, that's really hard to pull meaning out of. But by putting it into the visual map, that actually changes everything, because now we humans, we can see patterns and we can go, wow, what's going on here in these areas where there's a lot of red dots, a lot of people barfing on the streets of Wellington. And what the city council found out was that these are areas where, not surprisingly, there's a high concentration of bars. And so when they examined what was happening, they found that these bars did not have enough toilets in them. So people were drinking a lot of beer. They would go to use the toilet, but it was full. And so they would come out into the street where they would get hit by food smells from the surrounding restaurants, and that would cause them to vomit. And so they're like, oh, right, okay, maybe we need to rethink how many toilets we require per capita for restaurants that serve alcohol or bars that serve alcohol. And so and that was something that they had never imagined was anything they needed to even be thinking about. So this idea of getting information, and then the other really important thing about being able to visualize things in a way that we humans can comprehend, again, taking information you might already have, moving it out of the lines in an Excel spreadsheet and moving it into a map, is that you take away the question of whether something is a problem or not. And so, for example, by having their digital twin of the city and being able to mimic rising ocean waters, they can instantly see which are the first parts of the city that are going to flood. And so what that does is it eliminates all discussion as to whether or not it's a problem and gets everyone focused on the solution immediately and working together to find the right solution. And this kind of thing is also really, really useful for convincing management that something needs to be done. Being able to translate whatever the technical problem is visually into something that non-technical people who determine who your budget is, that's a really important part of digital twins. And then another really key operation, teleoperations, being able to put some kind of, in this case, 360-degree camera on a robot. If you've got a robot that is doing something dangerous, like handling explosives, and then to use, in this case, 5G, to have the handler be really far away and yet have extremely close to real-time ability to see what the robot is doing and to do the controls from a distance that's safe for the human. These kind of teleoperations using virtual reality so that you can make sure, so the human is not limited by just the robot's, like any kind of small field of view, but the human has full ability to see the 360-degree area around the robot for full safety. But then another really important part of virtual reality is emotions. And because people can connect to each other in immersive virtual reality better than they can, again, in something like this Zoom call. And so this is a company, there's lots of examples here, but this is a company called Body Swaps. And in this one, what happens is you practice giving bad news or being a therapist to someone who's got some kind of a problem. And so you go through the situation. And so in this case, this avatar here that you're interacting with, not a real person, but she is saying like, well, I've been considering suicide. And then you respond as yourself. And then what happens after you've gone through this like 5 minutes of this conversation, you play it back, but you switch. And now you see yourself through her eyes. And I tell you, it's quite confronting. You might have thought that you were fabulous at saying all the right things, but then when you see yourself, you're like, wow, that was, I could really use some practice here. And then plus they do analysis on some of the measurable quantitative things like eye contact and staying positive. And so that's just a really, really short, given the time frame that we have, overview of some of the elements that we're seeing, some of the examples of the ways that we're seeing the metaverse playing out over time. Playing out for the industrial metaverse. But one message that I really want to leave with you is how early in the development of the metaverse we are. Because if you compare the development of the internet to the development of the metaverse, I mean, the first consumer hardware for the internet came out in 1977. The first successful hardware for people getting actual computers at home. But there were all these different elements that needed to be developed, TCP/IP for file transfer, and World Wide Web, and being able to have effective search. I mean, look how late that came in. And then I kind of ended here on the timeline with the mobile internet, because that actually is the thing that really democratized the internet and got it into the hands of billions around the world. Look at that. 30 years is how long that took to develop. Where are we in the development of the metaverse? Well, let's see. The first true commercial hardware for virtual reality came in 2016. We're only 7 years into this journey. Now, I personally believe the metaverse is going to develop faster than the internet did, but there are so many tools and so many foundational elements that are yet to come in the metaverse. So if it seems a little clunky, if it seems a little kind of, I was expecting more. Yeah, of course, this is such early days, but don't worry. I mean, we're at the bulletin board stage here where we were with internet development. So don't worry, amazing, amazing things are coming. And one of the things that we particularly have our eye on is the role that the democratization of access to augmented reality. What is the role that that's going to play? And so just as a little thought experiment, as soon as ChatGPT came out, we had these Stanford students put together, they got some glasses and they linked it to a speech to text translator, and then they ran that into ChatGPT, and they kludged together this this ability for ChatGPT to give real-time responses to, or to give you text to what you should say to the person that you're talking with in a conversation. Now, again, this is just something that some students, cranked up together from some, parts that are out there. This is the kind of thing that may be in our future. Being able to have real-time access to generative AI in our daily lives, on our factory floors, to solve problems that we cannot even imagine today. So watch this space. Crazy, amazing, spectacular things are coming. And with that, I'm going to end it. I'm going to hand over to Juha. But first, I'm going to do a really cheap and shameless plug of my book. I have written a book about the metaverse, including the industrial metaverse and the enterprise metaverse. It's called Interconnected Realities. It comes out in June, but it's available for pre-order on Amazon now. So if you're interested in learning more about the metaverse and where it's going, and it's hundreds of use cases, much like the ones I've been showing you in this book. Yeah, okay, like I said, shameless plug. Okay, the end. Juha, over to you.
Thank you, Leslie. So your presentation, let me talk about two movies. The first one is Entrapment, where Catherine Zeta-Jones was doing this training with all these infrared light sensors. And the other is Matrix, where with the metaverse actually in play, controlling all our lives. Okay, so
right. Well, and actually, I'll just comment on that really quickly. It's really important. Science fiction can actually help us envision the worlds that we want to build and the worlds that we don't want to build. And we have to be super conscious and drive towards the world, understand what world we want to build, and make active choices driving towards that world, because a lot of the science fiction that's out there is the bad case. So let's steer away from those and to the stuff that we want to have happen.
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. So our next speaker is Juha Listelia. So over to you, Juha.
Thank you, Henry. It's hard to believe that Google is 25 years old now. It's actually hard to believe that Facebook's going to be 20 next year. So maybe we can say that it's kind of a time for something new. So again, thanks everybody for joining the panel. I'm super interested to be here. I'm actually coming from the kind of a different perspective to this. So let me do a little bit of an introduction. Henry already gave my introduction, so I'm going to skip that part. But I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Immersal first. We are a startup, kind of. And we were founded in Finland in 2015. And we were actually acquired in 2021 by a Swedish corporation called Hexagon, about $5 billion revenue. So they're a little bit bigger than we are. However, we are totally independent, which is awesome. It's always great to be an entrepreneur with someone else's money. So anyway, that being said, our team is small, but we are a very unique mix of talent, ranging from machine vision, game developers, 3D designers, 3D engineers, and also kind of an optical background people. And then, of course, a range of business people with different variety of backgrounds. And since we're based in Helsinki, a lot of our development happens there. That's kind of our heart of engineering. I'm based here in Cupertino, California, and my role is to drive our business here in the United States. And considering our size, we've been quite successful over the past few years. But I'll talk about that a little bit later, because I want to also talk about this industry in general. I know we have different perspectives. There may be people who are interested in implementing AR. There may be people who are interested in investing in AR as an industry sector, and also people who are creating AR experiences. And we all have same target, but a little bit different approach to it. So, but let's talk about the Immersal a little bit first. So what we do, we kind of build, we do things. We do spatial mapping and visual positioning. We're a cloud-based platform, and we kind of try to play with everybody. We support most devices out there in the market, including AR glasses. We just created a partnership with Magic Leap 2. We have a support for HoloLens, all the big players basically, and we're going to be in AWE end of this month, and we're going to be featured by Magic Leap 2, and it's going to be an interesting show. So follow that if you are interested in AR. It's here in Santa Clara this year, the US version, but definitely worth going there. But since I believe some of you may not know what is spatial mapping and visual positioning, I want to start with that. And I like to tell this example, which is a little bit odd, but us as humans, we have amazing spatial mapping computer in our head, and we don't even realize that. It is very intuitive thing we all do. Example, you enter a room that you've never been before. Your brain, through your eyes, which are your cameras, can very quickly figure out the kind of rough dimensions of the room. Like it's probably like 5 meters by 3 by 2, and I think the desk's like 4 meters away. And then when you spend more time in that space, in that physical space, your map in your brain becomes sharper and sharper. And then you can walk out of the room and you still have that map in your head. You're like, okay, I visited that place. I kind of remember how it was laid out. And then you can do two things, which are really beautiful considering us as computers. We can first of all imagine virtually that same space we did visit. And not only the space, but we can also imagine new objects or different angles, perspectives in that space. And also, when we are in that space, we have a very good comprehension on like, okay, if I toss my crumpled paper in a corner, I hope I can hit the trash can, and that's visual positioning. That is basically what we do constantly without thinking at all. So immersal does the same thing, except we do it for computers, AI, and robots. So we're kind of their hippocampus and eyes and the brain for the spatial mapping and visual positioning. What it really does, what really allows you to do is allows to merge digital content with physical world by basically enabling any device with a display and a camera to precisely locate themselves through the camera view. And now you may think, okay, well, there's GPS. I know already where I am, kind of roughly, but the GPS doesn't actually know where you are looking at. It doesn't know which alignment you have. Are you standing up, or are you laying down, or are you looking at the roof? Or it has no way to track with things, what things are interesting to you, where your gaze turns, what things draw you in. So there's a lot of analytics in opportunity here to gather information from this type of an environment. So we enable AR on physical locations, and we can create environments where a lot of things happen in kind of existing physical space, and you can add and layer that experience forward to it. Again, shameless plugin here, but just a little bit about the platform first before I talk about the business itself. There are a lot of not a lot of VPS players, but there are a couple of very big VPS players. Google has a VPS. It's a part of the Google Map product. And it's kind of weird because it's kind of available for developers, though I just heard a rumor that they actually shut it down and it's not available anymore. And then you can kind of use it, but mainly outdoors where you already used the GPS. Why is it like this? Google uses the visual positioning to do their last mile delivery services on their Google Maps. And then a lot of our customers, when I talked to them first time, they're like, oh, yeah, but Google VP is free. That's awesome. I can just download the SDK and use it. And I'm like, yeah, kind of free, but you know, Uber pays $110 million to Google every year for this navigation. So, you know, maybe it's free for a developer, but it's definitely not free for companies. And then there's one caveat here. With Google, and I love Google VPS, I don't want to talk them down, but I'm just kind of pointing out where the hardships come, is that when you submit an image to Google Cloud Service to be localized and positioned, only thing you will get back are the coordinates to localized location. You will not get any data. You have no access to it. Google is not going to share it with you. They're not even sharing it with Uber. So they are holding into that. Oh, and another player, Niantic, great company. I love Pokemon. My wife loves Pokemon way too much. And Niantic has a product called Lightship. It was actually a company that they did acquire, I think, recently. And they used that as a kind of a VPS tool. But again, a little bit of a problem. The reason why we've been gaining a lot of customers from Niantic lately has been that they don't really support their customers with the mapping much. And this leads us into the enterprise environment. The reason why I have this slide here is basically those two reasons. If you are an enterprise, first of all, you're not so happy of having your, factory data or building asset data, property data on a third-party environment. Then there are government customers who definitely won't want to have any of that stuff outside of their walls. So how do you create VPS for those services? Well, you license it from Immersal. It's transferable. You can point us the server where you want to put it. We don't care if it's AWS, where most of our stuff runs. We have Azure as a platform for certain customers who absolutely don't want to have AWS for some reason. And then we're free to play in that sense. Another important thing is that I love the drawing here. Another beautiful thing is that you can own the asset. So when you digitize something, you will own that map. We don't really care about that IP or content or any of those aspects. We just license you the tools, and your world is yours to create. And then we have open developer platform. We have SDKs. We have forums for designers and developers who can kind of try get our SDK for license for 3 months and test it out. So we're kind of the only independent in this market at the moment. And I guess that's partially the reason why I've been gaining so lot of traction lately. But I'll talk about it a little bit later. Let's see. Oh, one more thing about creating spatial map. So first of all, you can go and download our application. It's just a consumer toy tool trial called the Immersal app. It's both an Android and iPhone App Store. And you can map your room. I've mapped my desk number of times. And once you have mapped that, you can add objects like pull photos from your photo library and put them on your wall virtually. And then you can even share the map by QR code, send it over to your friend. When he enters the same space, he can view the same objects you put in the wall, and you can actually both even manipulate those objects. So those are the few features of our platform that are kind of inbuilt by default to that. We share that map space, but here's the beauty one. You can use that same map you have created with different content. So let's say you are a large system integrator or large telecom operator, and you decide to map the city of Miami, which is totally possible. You can do it probably in about 6-7 days. And then you can go to, say, utility works of the city and say that, hey, why don't we kind of draw all the pipelines and storm lines and connectors here? Why don't we go and then talk to the gas company and see if they want to have their maintenance lines visualized? And you can see the catch. You can layer up the same thing multiple ways, but at the same time, you can only limit who sees what on your map. So you can kind of sell the same map, sell the same digital twin of the area multiple times. I said the cell phones map really well. We've mapped for large projects with cell phones, but I want to also feature one of our partners, Leica. They have great enterprise level tools. I really missed the drone because I just mapped a very large baseball stadium last week here, and I did about 22,000 steps and about 50 flights of stairs in 4 hours. And I was like, oh, I could really use the drone. So these are great tools. The autonomous scanning module, the dock you see in the middle, that's kind of mix of security and hazardous environments where you don't want to really put people into, or you want to have 24/7 mapping and a kind of tracking of a premises. So these tools are for that. All right, where does the VPS play? And here's the thing, why does our little startup and our little VPS service matter? We're kind of the glue between the augmented reality and the real world. And I'll give you a very real example. US Army has a certain type of augmented reality headset for soldiers, and they can see tactical data. on that view. There's all kinds of icons. There's the green and the red and the yellow. Green is good. Yellow is kind of something, and then red is bad guy. And that has to map into the view very precisely, because you don't want to have green being in the wrong place or that kind of an environmental distractions in that view. So positioning matters. Now, major part of AR that is happening today is somehow related to advertisement or marketing. Most of the money I'm seeing flowing in this area is larger corporates who want to have a presence and want to experiment with kind of horizontal partners, maybe sports teams that they sponsor. Maybe they are racetracks that they own. Maybe there are football, soccer fields that they sponsor, and they want to bring something new into that space. And again, we're the glue. Automotive, and this is an interesting thing. How does VPS really relate to automotive? Well, Tesla's self-driving feature is actually kind of built based on the VPS. Tesla doesn't use any lidars. Automotive lidar today is probably like, I don't know the latest numbers, but I'd say $6,000 to $8,000 automotive grade. So you can imagine that it's definitely not going to be in Toyota Corolla anytime soon, because you need 5 of those. So they're very expensive. That's why you mostly see them in S-Class Mercedes and big luxury cars. But Tesla went a different way. They're like, okay, we're not definitely going to put those there. I'm going to just go and use cameras and radar for the distance and cameras to create the visual positioning. Their technology is actually called SLAM, which is simultaneous location and mapping, but the technology is fundamentally the same. Then education, of course, this is a lot of these use cases were already covered by Leslie. Great examples, and I'm not going to deep dive into those. But obviously training, learning, digital twin applications for industrial training. And I can give you an example here. Nuclear power plant. Most engineers in US nuclear power plants start to be, I hate to say this, but they start to be old. They are very close to retirement age. And I met a couple of these guys last year. And they were like, hey, we need to start training new guys, but we're literally going around with folders on a mock-up control room of the nuclear power plant. And do you guys have any ideas how we could do this virtually? I'm like, well, probably some things are good to do physically on site, but I have a few ideas for you. And that's kind of an example of a training where you don't have to have a physical presence on site, or you can augment and use the same training premises with different dials, different buttons, and different layouts of control boards without actually physically having to change them. Then games, government, healthcare. Healthcare is a big one. There's a little bit of a regulation issue there. Nonprofits who want to store, save old historical sites that are degrading, and they want to store them and digitize them for the future generations. And then, of course, sports, huge. Retail, huge. A lot of marketing in retail, and then, of course, the travel and hospitality. But that's a kind of super fast rundown on the segments that we do play. And now, if you look at the industrial setting, there are a few things going on. And I want to talk about the business area a little bit more. Also want to know how much time I have. I don't want to run too much over. The enterprise environment is a little bit tricky. The reason for that is that, first of all, enterprise tools are usually massive, established. You have SAP, you have certain BIM tools, you have CAD tools that have been used for a long time. And to enter that market with AR, you have to play with those guys. You have to become a module or kind of get attached to these big tools to get into those corporate environments in terms of construction, energy, and kind of more traditional industry sectors. That's my advice if you want to be there. That's the easy way. There are a lot of trials going on in interesting stuff. We are looking into one which is related to the asset tracking that we have here. A very large gas power plant is being built in Texas, and that construction area, you can see it from space. That's kind of a scale of it. And now having that quite a lot of construction material all around that area is actually problematic. They have generally about 200 18-wheeler trucks just parked around that area to haul concrete and steel beams and pipes and all this stuff. Try to find truck number 37. And this is where the asset management, asset tracking comes into the play. You could visualize and you could kind of render all those assets into the view, and you would just lift your cell phone and look around and, oh, there's the load I need to go and pick up, and just walk there and pick it up. Again, we're not doing asset tracking, but we're kind of enabling the convenience, the easiness of it. And a lot of this actually comes down to the workflow optimization. Sometimes it's also food traffic optimization. When you play with these areas, you also have to start to take into account the safety and compliance, because especially here in the land of plenty, you can get sued very quickly on any hazardous environments or accidents and all that stuff. And then, of course, with the IoT and industrial data being fed into your view selectively, the predictive maintenance and kind of more advanced applications come into the play, combined with the facility layouts and so on and so forth. So they're kind of scratching the enterprise side of the things. But if you look at the enterprise part of the metaverse, you can kind of identify 4 pillars there. First of all, there's a lot of data and information. I think we kind of live in the age of excess with information nowadays. Everybody has so much data that they don't even know what to do with it. But you do have a lot of data available, and that can create data visualizations in metaverses. Then more and more, you start to have digital assets. They can be digital twins of physical properties and models. And those can also describe processes. You can see how things move around. You can see how the warehouse operation actually works when it's not working, and so on and so forth. And then there are the physical objects, which actually also are relevant to us in terms of VPS, because if you automate, you start to have more and more need for having a perception with your automation. Because things are not always where they are supposed to be. Los Angeles Seaport uses major lift system that is fully machine vision based. Don't ask me how I know, but they have basically automated the container handling, and it's kind of weird dance of robots and these huge lifts that pick the containers up and sort them out and so on and so forth. So that's kind of great example of an environment where the physical objects come into the play with the data, the models, and also the kind of optimization of the product. And then Leslie touched the subject a little bit, and then we have the experts who are actually the people who kind of oversee the thing. And now more and more, you start to see AI creeping in here. At some point, maybe the AI is kind of 50-50 with the people. Maybe the expert is actually ChatGPT, and that tells you what to do instead of a person. But nonetheless, whether it's human or AI, you can create an avatar that someone is that the user is comfortable with. An avatar that stands by you, next to you when you work on stuff, and you can have a dialogue with. Imagine that you would have a work buddy you could talk to. He or she would react. You could even maybe choose the preference and personality that you like to talk to, and they would verse that for you. And then that could be your help. And oh, by the way, that person or avatar also needs to be mapped on the physical premise so it looks real. So BPS again. Kind of touched some of these already, so I'm not going to dwell in too much into this. What I want to bring up here is the importance of changing workplace. So metaverses will change how things work. Over the time of COVID, we already shifted. We're all on Zoom or Google Meet or a number of other tools, and that's become the standard. I work from home about probably 90% of my time, and I meet most of the people, unfortunately, through the computer. And then you start to have all kinds of interesting questions about, safety, privacy, and then also keeping the motivation. I'm very social. I sometimes feel really bad because I don't have really anyone to talk to, except for, of course, my wonderful wife. But I talk to her all the time, so sometimes I'm running off the topics. So the social aspect of work is also something that you need to take into account. Now, AI comes into the play and can create you that social aspect too. So we will have quite novel ways of working in the future, and it may come to the point where it's kind of hard to even tell, like, okay, is this dialogue coming from a computer or a person? I really loved Leslie's example of the dating app that basically ChatGPT feeds back the answers. Today, you can still tell if it's done with ChatGPT, and a lot of people, by the way, use it. I've gotten a lot of emails that I can tell, oh, this has been produced with ChatGPT. No, that's fine. They're easy to read. They're very comprehensive and good. Oh, by the way, the image in the middle. The guy, obviously, in the black is not real. He is a volumetric video 3D guy that you can place. If you wonder where this photo is taken, it's actually taken from our team building event in February when I tried our platform volumetric video implementation the first time, and it was mind-boggling. You could drop this person in the middle of other people. You could barely tell that, oh, okay, this guy's digital and these other guys are, real. And then you can start the video and you can walk up to the person, that 3D model of the person. He's going through his speech, or in this case, it's a magician going through magic tricks. And if you want to learn that trick, you just pause him. And you will walk behind him and you look at his hands, rewind back a little bit and see how he does the trick. Imagine this as a training tool or avatar in an environment.
Juha, I think you need to wrap up pretty quickly, please.
Yes, of course. My bad. I always go over time. So only one thing about this slide is important. When you create AR experience or AR tool, or you try to sell your tool to a user or customer, make sure there's a real advantage there. The reason is that the people always want to get ahead. They want to have some kind of advantage. World is competitive. You can save time, save money, make things a little bit easier for them. You've been, of course, for the viability, you have to show the business case and the productivity. But the desirability is the most important thing for any AR application. Is there real value? Because I'm not going to pick up a phone if the AR experience lasts 30 minutes. I can barely hold the phone 2 minutes, and then I'm tired. And then that's kind of takeaway for all AR stuff. So focus on that. There are real cases. For people who are interested in investing in this field, look at the startups now. I've seen many. We got invited to T-Mobile Accelerator program, started yesterday. And I've already met a lot of new startups in this field. Pretty cool stuff out there. So now it's the time to jump in, I think, for a lot of this stuff. Anyway, long story short, back to you, Henry. Thanks everybody for being patient.
Thank you, Juha. And maybe, yeah, Leslie. Oh, great. You turn on your screen as well. Now, we just go through a short Q&A. This is very interesting presentations from Leslie and Juha. For everyone, if you have a question, please type in the chat. I will throw them at the presenters directly. Okay, while you're typing, I've already 2 questions that was entered earlier. First is maybe to Leslie about, is it the right time to invest in the metaverse project? Or when is the right time to invest in a metaverse project?
That's an excellent question, and one of the ones that I actually get quite often. Because especially when I show that timeline, it's like, okay, this is a super early time in the metaverse, and people go, oh, wow, that's and investment, get in early. The problem is knowing where to invest, and because yes, the metaverse in general, but then choosing a very specific thing to actually put your money on, that's difficult. Because if you think about if you were investing in the internet at the same level of development as the metaverse is today, you'd be investing in, I don't know what, CompuServe, Prodigy, something that doesn't exist anymore now. So, the early movers are not always the ones that have the explosive growth, because right now we're really in the infrastructure development stage. And with that in mind, and keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor. This is not actual financial advice. But what I would say is that what seems to me to be inevitable is the infrastructure foundations. So, companies like Immersal that are developing maps, companies like Qualcomm that are developing the hardware, the actual chipsets. That's none of this stuff happens without them. So that's actually where I would start. But again, not a financial analyst.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. The next question is for Juha is, what are the barriers or challenges your potential clients have before they become your customers or before they join the bandwagon of the metaverse?
So one of the biggest challenges is that this industry is new, like Leslie explained. I'm going through very basics, sometimes even outside of my scope, to explain what can be done and what can't be done, and what's useful done, and it's a lot of education. And then the use cases are sometimes odd. They have to be found. They're not very obvious to enterprise customers. You have to work a lot with the customers to kind of create those opportunities for them and sometimes open the eyes. So it's not a barrier, but it takes a lot of footwork to open those opportunities.
Okay, that's interesting. So, for anyone who is considering jumping onto the metaverse, in fact, we have our company have already done that. We have some early adoption of the metaverse, which we found very useful for, especially in training, that we don't need to send unexperienced technicians to be on site, where we have to have all these safety precautions because they don't understand the working environment, which is quite interesting and helpful. Maybe this question is to both of you, Leslie and Juha, about what are the risks that you see, especially in the generative AI, security, data protection, or any other related risks that you can see or foresee in this particular metaverse implementations? Maybe Leslie first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, with generative AI, really making sure that we don't, end up in the Terminator scenario. Obviously, that's everybody's front of mind. But then more specifically for the industrial things, there's two levels. I mean, data security and data privacy absolutely have to be there, or these are not going to work. But there's two levels of security and privacy that we need to be thinking about. One is the corporate level, and you spoke about this a little bit. You want to make sure that your corporate information is not going to end up somewhere out on the internet, is going to make it outside your walls. So making sure that you're actually ring fencing the corporate information. But then there's the private information of the actual people who are using things. And you say, well, it's my company, what they know who I am. Why do I have to worry about my privacy? Well, there's a lot of the VR headsets that actually get, and especially in training, like the HP Reverb, it actually has a lot of cameras pointed at you. So following your eye tracking and your facial expressions and gathering your emotional information to get your emotional response to improve the training. And that can be a really good thing, but it can also go too far. So we have to make sure that we respect people's personhood and and don't go too far in collecting information, especially very, very personal kinds of things, and make sure that everyone understands at every step of the way that they understand what information is being gathered from them and have the opportunity to give their consent before accepting it. So if I want to go through the training, but I don't want people to be looking at my facial expressions, I have the opportunity to tick a box and say training, but don't look at me, and that's fine. So we really have to be very aware of how intrusive these things can be, and be aware, and always end user control. That's it. Transparency, end user control. If you design with those in mind, that'll be the best way to actually avoid those problems.
You are
true. I think the risks that will materialize with AI are actually already out there.
Yeah.
If you look at the internet today, look at the Facebook posts and the comments. Half of the comments are bots. They're disinformation. They're malicious comments. Imagine an AI that would kind of be used, but then controlled by a malicious entity that would actually want to tweak the answers a little bit one way or another. So again, you have to really trust. And the worst case scenario here is that we get great ChatGPT 10, which is totally human and gives most brilliant answers. And then somebody takes it over and starts to skew. Imagine skewing AI's thinking and then telling answers to people. I'm like, oh, well, that's an economy of scale to influence people. And then basic scammers. Why don't you put an AI to answer your Facebook Marketplace scams? It would be perfect. So anyway, those are and they exist already.
Yeah. Well, I can see that there's always this. We need the information. We need the data to predict especially in the big data engine. But then we don't want to store the data, the raw data, to protect the personal interests. So it's a bit of a balance act. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, Henry, what you just said the magic word there, which is store. One of the things that we're seeing a lot of companies that are out there that are providing services to corporate clients is the ability to actually do some kind of thing, like visualize something in AI, but having no ability to store the corporation's data whatsoever. You mentioned you're working with Magic Leap, the Magic Leap 2, for example. They specifically have as part of their product design, we are rendering your digital twin, but we at Magic Leap do not have access to that digital twin. That remains with you. So the ability to have this kind of pass through of data and to be able to guarantee that and to prove that they're not actually copying your super secret, atomic plant that you're building. This is going to be increasingly important.
Yes. Okay, maybe thinking of time, maybe I'll ask the last two questions. The first one is there's a question about digital art, or the so-called NFT art-based art, and the metaverse. So how do you see these two fields come together, or would they come together?
Yeah, the Web3 aspect of the metaverse is kind of a subset of the wider metaverse, and it's a slightly different thing, but it's kind of developing in parallel with the metaverse, so the two have kind of become interlinked in a lot of ways. But fundamentally, the question, what the question's asking, it's really about blockchain, and there are definitely good uses of blockchain potentially, in terms of guaranteeing the uniqueness of digital art, and at the same time being able to guarantee things like unique contracts and all that kind of stuff in the enterprise world. But honestly, I have reservations about blockchain technology because the chains get so big so fast. There's a sustainability problem here, and a speed and a compute power issue. And I wonder if blockchain ultimately is just going to be heavier in terms of the computing infrastructure that's required for it than will ultimately be worth. That's just my personal feeling. It's definitely not a Nokia position. At Nokia, we are experimenting with using blockchains for rapid contract signing and things like that. But I just see the amount of energy expenditure, and it makes me wonder. We have a sustainability pledge as well, and so we really are careful about the energy that we're expending in terms of the things that we build.
Any comment from you?
So digital video art is a form of creative expression, and I think that kind of bridges into industrial design and industrial aesthetics that are a very important point in both the metaverse and also in the real world. So I think this kind of could allow artists to contribute into the kind of more immersive virtual spaces, more product-related design suggestions. Another field is, again, the training and education. Digital video art is, well, seems to be my kids' only training nowadays through YouTube. So clearly a major aspect of it. Now, NFTs are tricky. It's a form of a payment. It's a form of a transaction, basically. I'm not going to say anything about NFT, but I would say that micropayments is something that everyone should look into in the digital business at today, because that is the moneymaker. Look at the Roblox. Geez, it's all micropayments. Kids are dumping their dollars there one by one, and that's a lot of dollars. So those kind of things come together. And then, of course, the marketing and branding, but that's clearly marketing. So kind of outside of maybe the industrial use case.
Yeah, okay. Well, last question is, maybe this is $100 million question. Would metaverse take over our lives?
No. The metaverse will enhance our lives in the same ways that the internet has. It's just that right now, if we want to actually experience the internet, we need to look at a screen. We're all looking at a screen right now. And what that means is that I'm looking at this two-dimensional thing, and I'm not looking at my actual physical surroundings. I'm not looking at anybody else who might be in the room. I'm not looking at them in the eyes. And so the screens take us away from our physical world. And so what the metaverse will do, particularly in the augmented and mixed reality iterations of it, will take away the screen, but retain the digital content that we're actually getting from screens and integrate them into our surroundings as we move through our physical world. That for me is the ultimate version and vision of the metaverse. The fully immersive and virtual reality part of the metaverse, nobody's going to spend all their time there. The maximum amount of time you're going to be there, it's like going to the movie theater. You cut yourself off from the rest of the world when you do that. It's a great experience, but you're not going to do it all the time. I keep saying, at some point you have to take the headset off and go make dinner for your kids. And augmented reality might help you with that, but you can't do that while you're in virtual reality. So yeah, we'll be experiencing that digital physical fusion that I mentioned all the time, but we're not going to be living in a fully digital world.
Johan?
I would say that I'll post a link here to the YouTube video. It was a video created by Keiichi Matsuda. It's a digital artist, actually hired by Facebook nowadays, or Meta. And it's an eye-opener. It's called a hyper reality. Some of you may have seen it already. That shows you what it feels like when virtuality takes over. Video is pretty intense.
But Juha, don't use that as an example. Oh my God, that's like, it's like the worst case scenario.
It is the worst case scenario.
And that actually, you're right. It's like what happens when it takes over.
Oh.
Because the end user doesn't have any control, and that is nobody is going to wear AR glasses that gives you that experience. And in fact, good AR, you need to make sure you're not occluding the ground, because people are going to trip and fall and hurt themselves. I mean, it's like, no, that's it's a nightmare scenario, Juha.
Clearly you have seen the video, so that you can tell from reaction from Leslie that what it is. As I said, this
is what augmented reality is not going to be.
Yeah, and it's a great example where not to go, and also what not to make out of it, and not to overload people.
Okay.
There you go. Sorry.
Should have said that up front.
Okay, this is a very lively discussion, and maybe last word from you, Leslie, before we close.
Yeah, I really fully believe that getting digital information out of our two-dimensional screens and integrated into the world around us, it's going to develop over the next decade or so. But when it comes, we're going to look back and go, wow, we spent all of our time like staring at a screen and like working with a keyboard. We're going to be dealing with each other and with our surroundings, in a naturalistic, enhanced way that is, we're going to be getting information from the internet while we feel the sunshine on our face. And I think it's actually going to be a very beautiful future.
Yeah, thank you. And Juha?
Hook up with me in LinkedIn. Big boys like Deloitte, Accenture, EY, get our BPS platform, because now is the time to grab the market before Niantic or someone else does anything. That being said, you are going to see a lot of AR stuff coming over the next few years. It's going to be gradual. It's going to be minor. It's going to be added in existing applications, but you will like it. And it's not going to be overwhelming like the video.
But I actually have one quick last moment thing to say about the industrial metaverse. We kind of ended up talking about the consumer metaverse here at the end. The industrial metaverse is here today. I suddenly realized we should have said that, because people will take a device that's a little bit heavy, a little bit clunky, and put it on their heads to actually perform a task more efficiently. And so everything we need to actually realize the industrial metaverse is already here. It's already happening, and it's bringing huge product and productivity efficiencies. So if you're not using it, if your company's not using it, give Juha a call and get him to show you what they can do, because it's amazing. Almost every task you can think of, some kind of way of using augmented reality or virtual reality will make it better.
Well, thank you, Leslie. And in fact, this is exactly, you just help us promote the next event on Metaverse in 2 weeks' time on May 11th, which is on the consumer Metaverse. And I suggest everyone to go to the FinCham Hong Kong webpage if you want to join. That's the opportunity to look at the consumer side of things on the Metaverse. So thank you very much, Juha and Leslie, for a very informative and lively discussion. Definitely tonight or this weekend, I'll revisit the Matrix trilogy, or actually now four movies. That's about 8 hours worth. It's a great movie. So I'll look at the Metaverse as we saw it in about 20 years ago, and see how Keanu Reeves explained that to us. Maybe again. Okay. Thank you.
Henry, you know that Keanu Reeves was explaining to some teenagers recently, like they're like, well, what's the plot of the metaverse? And he's like, well, this guy finds out that maybe not everything is not the way he thought it was, and that there's, computers controlling things. And these teenagers are like, so?
It's happening now. It's happening now.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, the presenters, Juha and Leslie, and thank you everyone for joining for this hour and a half. And I look forward to the next event to see all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry, and everyone attending.
See you in AWE. Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.